The account. My name is Kieran Blake, and I used to run with the Stratford Boys in East London. Used to, before they killed my younger brother and tried to make it look like he'd crossed them. Jamal was 16 when they found him in the stairwell of our estate in Newham, 3 gunshot wounds to the chest. The police said it was gang violence, said Jamal had been dealing for a rival crew, said he'd gotten what was coming to him. But I knew different. Jamal had never been in the life. He was smart, studying for his GCSEs, planning to be the first in our family to go to university. He'd stayed clean while I'd made every wrong choice possible. The Stratford Boys had been my family for 5 years. I'd joined when I was 17, stupid and angry after our dad walked out. Mum had fallen apart, started drinking, couldn't hold down her job at the supermarket. Jamal and I had to fend for ourselves, and the gang offered something that felt like structure, like belonging. They'd given me respect, money, a place in the world. I'd done things for them I'm not proud of. Dealt drugs on street corners in Stratford and Forest Gate, collected debts from people who couldn't pay, hurt people who'd gotten in the way of business. I'd carried weapons, I'd fought rivals, I'd done time in young offenders for assault when I was 19. But through all of it, I'd kept Jamal out. Made sure everyone in the Stratford Boys knew my little brother was off limits, that he wasn't part of this world. Jamal was going to be different. He was going to make something of himself, get out of the estate, build a proper life. He had dreams of becoming a doctor, spent hours studying in the local library because our flat was too chaotic, too loud. He volunteered at the community centre, helped younger kids with their homework, played football on weekends. He was good. Pure. Everything I wasn't. Then I'd wanted out. After 5 years in the gang, I'd seen too much, done too much. I'd watched friends die, watched lives destroyed by drugs, watched families torn apart. I'd started having nightmares about the people I'd hurt, about the choices I'd made. I was 22 and I felt like I was 50, like I'd lived 3 lifetimes of violence and pain. So I'd gone to Marcus Thompson, the leader of the Stratford Boys. Marcus Razor Thompson, called that because he was sharp, calculating, always 3 steps ahead. He'd built the Stratford Boys from nothing, turned them from a small street gang into a proper criminal enterprise with operations across East London. I'd told him I was done. Wanted to go straight, maybe move out of London, start fresh somewhere. Get a proper job, maybe do a college course, build a legitimate life. I'd put in my time, I'd been loyal, I'd earned my walk. Marcus had smiled, patted me on the back, said of course, no hard feelings. You put in your time, bruv. You earned your walk. Some mans ain't built for this life forever. I respect that. Go do your thing. I should have known better. Should have known that in Marcus's world, there was no walking away. You were in until you were dead or in prison. Those were the only exits. 2 weeks later, Jamal was dead. I got the call at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. It was my mum, screaming, incoherent. I'd run the whole way to the estate, my heart pounding, knowing something terrible had happened but not wanting to believe it. The police were already there, yellow tape cordoning off the stairwell. Ambulance lights painting everything blue and red. Neighbors hanging out of windows, standing in doorways, filming on their phones. And in the middle of it all, my mum, being held back by 2 police officers, trying to get to the stairwell, screaming Jamal's name over and over. They wouldn't let me see him. Said it was a crime scene, said I'd have to identify him at the hospital later. But I knew. I knew from the way the police looked at me, from the number of bullet wounds they mentioned, from the location. This wasn't random. This was a message. The message was clear. You don't leave the Stratford Boys. And if you try, we take what matters most. I went to Marcus first, the day after they released Jamal's body. Found him at one of his businesses, a barber shop in Stratford that was really a front for money laundering. He was in the back room, counting money with 2 of his boys. Kieran. He'd looked up, his face carefully neutral. I'm sorry about your brother, man. Tragedy. Don't. My voice was shaking. Don't pretend you didn't do this. Marcus had stood up slowly, his boys flanking him. You need to be careful what you're accusing me of. Your brother got caught on rival territory. East Ham boys, probably. Wrong place, wrong time. He was in our estate. In our building. That's not rival territory. Things change. Boundaries shift. You've been out of the game for 2 weeks, maybe you don't know how things are moving. The smirk on his face was barely hidden. He was enjoying this, enjoying my pain. It was you. You ordered it. Because I wanted out. Marcus's face hardened. If I wanted to send you a message, I'd send it to you directly. Your brother's death, that's got nothing to do with me. But if you want to keep making accusations, if you want to keep running your mouth, then maybe you'll find out what a real message looks like. His boys had moved closer, hands going to their waistbands. I was outnumbered, outgunned. If I made a move, I'd be dead before I hit the ground. So I'd left. But as I walked out, I heard one of Marcus's boys laugh. Just a short, cruel sound that told me everything I needed to know. They'd done it. Marcus had ordered it, and his top enforcers, Deshaun Miller and Tyler Tex Johnson, had carried it out. They'd murdered my 16-year-old brother to punish me for wanting a different life. The funeral was the hardest day of my existence. Watching my mum collapse at the graveside, watching our aunties and uncles try to hold her up, watching Jamal's friends from school cry and hug each other. He'd been so loved, so full of potential. And now he was gone, buried in a cemetery in Manor Park, his dreams dead with him. Marcus and some of the Stratford boys came to the funeral. Stood at the back in their expensive tracksuits and jewelry, paying their respects. Making sure everyone saw them, making sure I knew they were watching. It took everything I had not to attack them right there, not to grab a shovel and cave in Marcus's skull. But I didn't. I played the grieving brother, the broken young man who'd lost everything. I let them think I was defeated, that I'd accepted Jamal's death as the price of my choices. But inside, I was planning. Every moment of every day, I was planning my revenge. The Stratford boys operated out of East London, but they had connections everywhere. Drug routes from Liverpool to Brighton, protection rackets across the city, money laundering through dozens of legitimate businesses. Marcus was smart, kept himself insulated from the actual crimes. Deshaun and Tech did the dirty work, but Marcus gave the orders from a distance, always careful, always clean. The police had been trying to bring him down for years, but he was too clever, too well protected. Taking them down wouldn't be easy. But I'd spent 5 years learning how they operated, learning their weaknesses, their routines, their secrets. I knew where the money went, I knew who their suppliers were, I knew which police officers were on their payroll. And now I was going to use every bit of that knowledge. I started with research. I reached out to old contacts, people who owed me favors, people who'd known Jamal. Slowly, piece by piece, I built a picture of what had happened that night. Jamal had been walking home from football practice at the community center. He'd taken his usual route, cutting through the estate, heading for our tower block. He'd been carrying his kit bag, his phone, probably had his headphones in listening to music like he always did. Tech and Deshaun had been waiting near the stairwell. They'd called him over, maybe pretended to be friendly at first. Jamal would have recognized them as my former associates, might have thought they had a message for me. Then Tech had pulled his gun. The shots had been heard across the estate. People had looked out their windows, seen 2 figures running. But no one had seen their faces clearly. No one would testify. That's how it worked in our world. You saw nothing, heard nothing, knew nothing. Snitches got stitches, or worse. But I knew. I knew who'd done it, I knew why, and I knew I was going to make them pay. I started watching Tech. Tyler Johnson was the muscle of the Stratford boys, the enforcer. He was 24, built like a boxer, covered in tattoos. He'd grown up on the same estate as me, had been in and out of young offenders since he was 14. Violence was his language, the only thing he understood. He was also incredibly stupid and arrogant. He liked to show off, liked to flash his money at clubs in Shoreditch and Hackney, liked to run his mouth when he'd had too much to drink. He thought he was untouchable because he had Marcus's protection. I watched him for 2 weeks. Learned his patterns, his habits, where he went, who he saw. Every Tuesday and Friday, he went to a gym in Canning Town. Wednesday and Saturday nights, he went clubbing. Sunday afternoons, he visited his nan in Plaistow. He drove a black Audi A3, parked it in the same spots, took the same routes. Tech thought he was being careful, but he was predictable. And predictable meant vulnerable. I found my opportunity at a club in Hackney on a Friday night. The place was called Pulse, a basement club that played grime and drill music, drew a crowd of gang members, drug dealers, and people who wanted to feel dangerous for a night. Tech was a regular there, knew the bouncers, got VIP treatment. I arrived early, paid my entry, and positioned myself in a corner where I could watch. Around midnight, Tech arrived with 3 other Stratford boys. They headed straight for the VIP area, bottles of vodka appearing almost immediately. Within an hour, Tech was drunk, loud, surrounded by girls who were more interested in his money than his personality. Around 2 in the morning, I saw him stumble toward the smoking area. This was my chance. I followed, keeping my distance, my hood up, my face down. The smoking area was a small courtyard behind the club, barely lit, half full of people too drunk or high to pay attention to anything. Tech was leaning against the wall, lighting a cigarette, alone for the first time all night. I approached him from the side, keeping to the shadows. Tech. He turned, squinting, trying to focus. Yeah? Who's that? I stepped into the light just enough for him to see my face. Recognition came slowly, filtered through alcohol and arrogance. Kieran. Blood, I ain't seen you in time. You good? His casual tone, like we were old friends, like he hadn't murdered my brother, made my blood boil. But I kept my voice calm. Need to talk to you. About Jamal. His expression shifted immediately, became guarded. Some survival instinct cutting through the drunk haze. Man, that's done. Ancient history. Don't bring up old business. Just want to understand what happened. That's all. Tech looked around, so we were relatively alone, relaxed slightly. The arrogance came back. Your brother was in the wrong place, in it got caught slipping on East Ham turf. Weren't nothing to do with us. East Ham? That's not what I heard. I heard it was you and Dishon. In our estate. In our building. Then you heard wrong. But his eyes told a different story. There was a flicker there, just for a second. Not guilt, exactly. More like irritation at being questioned. Marcus ordered it, didn't he? Because I wanted out. Because I asked to leave. Tech's hand moved to his waistband, where I knew he kept a knife. Even drunk, his instincts were good. You need to leave this alone, Kieran. Serious. Don't make me do something we both regret. Your brother's dead. Nothing gonna change that. But you keep pushing, you'll end up next to him. Too late for that. I'd brought my own blade, a lock knife I'd carried for years. It was in my jacket pocket, already open, blade locked. I was faster than Tech, always had been. He was strong, brutal, but I was quick. And he was drunk. The first cut was across his right hand as he reached for his weapon. Deep enough to slice tendons, to make him drop his knife, to make him cry out. Before he could recover, I hit him again, low, quick jabs to his abdomen. 1, 2, 3. Not immediately fatal, but enough. Enough to puncture organs, enough to make him bleed internally, enough to make him die slowly. I stepped back as he fell against the wall, then slid down to sitting, clutching his stomach. His white t-shirt was already turning red. His eyes were wide, shocked, like he couldn't believe this was happening to him. That's for Jamal, I said quietly, crouching so we were eye level. Every time you took a breath after killing him, you were living on borrowed time. Now the debt's paid. Marcus gonna kill you, Tech gasped. Gonna kill your whole family. My family's already dead. You made sure of that. I stood up, wiped my knife on a piece of cloth I'd brought, and walked away. I dropped the cloth and knife in an industrial bin 3 streets over, in an area I knew had no CCTV. I took off my jacket and reversed it to show the different colored lining, a trick I'd learned from years in the gang. Changed my appearance enough that anyone who'd seen me would struggle to identify me later. By the time I got home, I'd already heard the sirens. Ambulance, police, heading toward the club. Someone had found Tech. But it was too late. I knew from the placement of my cuts, from the amount of blood he'd been losing. He'd be dead before they got him to hospital, or he'd die on the operating table. I was right. The news came through the streets the next morning. Tyler Johnson, dead at 24. Stabbed outside a club in Hackney. Police were investigating, but there were no witnesses, no leads. Tech had plenty of enemies. Could have been anyone. But Marcus knew. I made sure he knew. I sent a message through Little Man, a 15-year-old kid who ran errands for the gang. Told him to pass it to Marcus, word for word. That's 1. 2 more to go. For Jamal. The street started talking immediately. People knew Tech had killed Jamal. People knew I'd wanted out. People could connect the dots. But knowing and proving are different things. And in our world, no one was going to testify against me any more than they'd testified against Tech. Marcus went quiet after that. Pulled back, increased security around himself and Deshaun. I'd expected that. You don't run a gang like the Stratford Boys for as long as Marcus had without being smart, without being paranoid. But I could wait. Patience was something prison had taught me. Time didn't matter when you had nothing left to lose. Deshaun was harder. Deshaun Miller was smart, calculating, nothing like the muscle-headed Tech. He was 26, had actually finished school, had worked legitimate jobs before getting into the gang life. He kept a low profile, didn't flash money, didn't draw attention. He was Marcus's right hand, the one who actually ran most of the day-to-day operations. After Tech's death, Deshaun went underground. He barely left his flat in Stratford, and when he did, he had at least 2 other gang members with him. His windows had bars, his door had a reinforced steel frame and 3 locks. He had boys watching the street below 24/7. I spent 3 weeks watching his flat, taking notes, learning patterns. His security worked in shifts, rotating every 6 hours. There were gaps in their coverage, moments when attention slipped, when one crew was tired and the next wasn't fully alert yet. But never long enough, never safe enough for me to make a move. Then I remembered Deshaun's mum. Mrs. Miller lived in Ilford, in a quiet residential street far from gang territory. I remember Deshaun mentioning her years ago, talking about how she'd kicked him out when he joined the gang, how she'd told him not to come back until he got his life straight. But blood is blood, and I figured he'd have reconnected eventually. I was right. After watching his flat for another week, I saw Deshaun leave on a Sunday afternoon, carrying flowers and a shopping bag from Tesco. I followed him at a distance as he drove to Ilford, parked his BMW 3 streets away from a terraced house, and walked the rest of the way. Through the window, I could see him inside, hugging an older black woman, handing her the flowers. His mum. He stayed for 2 hours, and from what I could see, they ate together, talked, laughed. He was being a good son. But good sons don't murder innocent 16-year-olds. The next Sunday, I was ready. I positioned myself near Deshaun's car, waiting. The street was quiet, residential, the kind of place where people minded their own business. At 4:30, Deshaun emerged from his mum's house, calling goodbye, promising to come back next week. I was leaning against his BMW when he rounded the corner. Deshaun. He stopped instantly, hand moving inside his jacket. I knew he carried a gun now, after what happened to Tech. Everyone in the Stratford boys had upgraded their security, their weapons. Easy, I said, holding up my phone, making sure he could see it. Just want to talk. And I want it on record. Record. His eyes narrowed. What are you playing at? I'm streaming this. Live. To multiple platforms. Whatever happens here, it's being watched. So unless you want to commit murder on camera, you'll keep that gun in your jacket. It was a bluff. I wasn't actually streaming yet. But Deshaun didn't know that, and the threat was enough to make him pause. You killed Tech, he said. Tech killed my brother. That was business, man. You know how it is. Marcus gave the order, we carried it out. That's the game. That's the life. You were in it long enough to know. Jamal wasn't in the game. He was 16, studying for his GCSEs. He wanted to be a doctor. He was innocent. Deshaun's face hardened, and I saw the same callousness I'd seen in Tech. Ain't nobody innocent. Not in this world. Your brother was your weakness. Marcus exploited it. That's strategy. That's how you control people, how you send messages. You want out? Fine. But there's a price. Your brother was the price. And you're mine. I pressed record on my phone, started the actual stream this time. Deshaun's face was clearly visible, his words being captured. Say that again, I said. Say what you just said about Jamal. About Marcus ordering his death. Deshaun realized too late what I'd done. His hand went for his gun, pulling it from inside his jacket. But I was already moving, closing the distance between us, tackling him before he could aim properly. We crashed against his BMW, setting off the alarm. The noise was deafening, and I knew we had maybe a minute before people started looking out windows, before someone called police. The gun was caught between us, both of us grappling for control. Deshaun was stronger, bigger, but I had desperation on my side. I twisted his wrist, trying to point the gun away from me. It went off. The sound was impossibly loud, echoing off the houses. Then again. 2 shots in quick succession. When we separated, Deshaun was clutching his chest. The bullets had caught him at an upward angle, the gun twisted wrong in the struggle. Blood was spreading across his white tracksuit, soaking through almost immediately. He looked at me, eyes wide with shock and disbelief. You set me up. I gave you a choice. You chose wrong. Just like you chose wrong with Jamal. I stood up, breathing hard. Around us, lights were coming on in houses. Curtains twitching, doors opening. Someone was screaming. An elderly man was running toward us, phone in hand. I picked up my phone from where it had fallen, ended the stream, and ran. Behind me, I could hear the chaos. Deshaun choking, people shouting, siren starting in the distance. But I was gone, disappearing into the maze of residential streets, heading for the tube station, just another young black man in a hoodie in London. The recording went viral within hours. I'd set it to automatically upload to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere I could think of. Deshaun's confession, his casual admission that Marcus had ordered a hit on an innocent 16-year-old boy. His justification of murder as strategy, as business, as the cost of leaving a gang. By that evening, it had been viewed millions of times. The mainstream media picked it up. Suddenly, Jamal's death wasn't just another gang killing in East London. It was a story. A tragedy. An innocent boy murdered by gang members for his brother's choice. The police couldn't ignore it anymore. They opened a full investigation into Jamal's death, into the Stratford boys, into Marcus Thompson's entire criminal enterprise. They raided properties, arrested associates, seized records and phones. And they found everything. Because once they started looking properly, once they had public pressure and media attention, they found what they should have found months ago. Text messages between Marcus and Dishon discussing Jamal. Financial records showing payments to Tech around the time of the murder. Witness statements that people were suddenly willing to give now that it was safe. Marcus was arrested 3 days after Dishon died. Charged with conspiracy to murder, ordering Jamal's death, running a criminal enterprise, money laundering, drug trafficking. The charges ran to pages. I thought it was over. Thought I'd won. But then the police came for me too. They found CCTV near the club where Tech died. Not of the actual murder, but of me arriving, of me following Tech. Found witnesses who'd seen us talking in the smoking area. Found forensic evidence I'd missed, traces of Tech's blood on a jacket I'd forgotten about. For Dishon, they had even more. My phone, with its location data. The recording itself, showing I was there, showing I'd provoked the confrontation. Ballistics showing the angle of the bullets, suggesting a struggle but also suggesting I'd initiated it. I was arrested 2 weeks after Marcus. Charged with 2 counts of murder. My solicitor tried his best. He argued self-defense with Dishon, argued that Tech had been the aggressor. He called expert witnesses to talk about PTSD, about the trauma of losing a sibling to violence, about the failure of the police to investigate Jamal's murder properly. He painted me as a victim striking back at a corrupt system. But the judge wasn't having it. Justice Okonkwo was a black woman in her 60s, stern-faced, with eyes that had seen too much human suffering. She'd probably presided over hundreds of gang-related cases, had probably heard every excuse, every justification. Mr. Blake, she said, looking at me from the bench, the court acknowledges the terrible loss you suffered. We acknowledge that your brother was an innocent victim, that his death was a tragedy, that the initial police investigation was inadequate. But we cannot condone vigilante justice. We cannot allow people to take the law into their own hands, no matter how sympathetic the circumstances. To do so would be to abandon the rule of law entirely. She sentenced me to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 20 years for Tech's murder. 15 years minimum for Dishon's death, to run concurrently. 20 years before I'd even be eligible for parole. Marcus got 25 years. Life, with a minimum of 25. He'd be nearly 60 when he got out, if he got out. As they led me away to begin my sentence, I passed Marcus in the corridor. Our eyes met for just a moment. His were empty, dead. Mine probably looked the same. We'd destroyed each other. Him by killing Jamal, me by killing his soldiers and bringing down his empire. And for what? Jamal was still gone. Tech and Dishon were still dead. And Marcus and I were both buried alive in prison. Now I'm in Belmarsh, high security. Marcus is here too, different wing. The guards make sure we never cross paths. But I know he's here, know he's thinking about me the same way I think about him. My mum came to visit once, 6 months into my sentence. She's aged 20 years in the last 2. Her hair has gone completely grey, her face is lined with grief and stress. She sat across from me in the visiting room and just cried. Didn't say anything for the first 10 minutes, just cried. Why? She finally asked. Why did you do it, Kieran? Why did you throw your life away? For Jamal, I said. For justice. Justice? She looked at me like I was a stranger. You think this is justice? Both my boys gone, one dead, one locked away forever. How is that justice? Jamal would hate this. He'd hate what you've become. She was right, and that's what hurts the most. Jamal would be horrified at what I did in his name. He'd spent his whole life trying to rise above violence, trying to be better. And I'd honored his memory by becoming exactly what he stood against. Mum hasn't been back since. I don't blame her. I've taken everything from her. First Jamal, then myself. I think about him every day. About the future he should have had. University, career, family. All stolen because Marcus couldn't let me walk away. And then I stole futures too. Tech's, Dishon's, my own. Violence breeds violence. Revenge breeds revenge. Until everyone is drowning in blood and no one can remember why it started. My cellmate, an older guy named Winston doing 15 for armed robbery, says everyone in here has regrets. Says the key is learning to live with them, finding some kind of peace. Says holding on to anger and guilt will eat you alive. Maybe he's right. Maybe there's a path forward, even from here. Maybe I can use my story to stop other kids from making the same mistakes, from joining gangs, from thinking violence solves anything. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking. Maybe I'm exactly where I deserve to be, paying for what I did, living with the consequences of my choices. Either way, Jamal is still gone. And no amount of revenge, no amount of justice, no amount of time in prison will bring him back. That's the truth I have to live with now. For the next 20 years, and probably for the rest of my life after that. I'm sorry, Jamal. For everything. For not protecting you better. For not being the brother you deserved. For choosing revenge over your memory, violence over your values. I'm sorry, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be better than what I became. But I know it's too late. The damage is done. And all I can do now is survive, day by day, in this place, with these memories, and hope that somehow, somewhere, you can forgive me. That's my story. That's my account. And I'll own it, every terrible part, until the day I die.